Today, I want to welcome you and our sister chapters. A special thank you to our New York chapter who was instrumental in helping the Carolinas chapter put the program together today. During the network session, I hope that you're able to connect with a few other members that you didn't know. We are represented today with over 125 registrants from 12 chapters across the globe. I must say we have to welcome at least one member from the UK. Virtual meetings aren't so bad after all, I guess. Our programs and events are made possible by our annual sponsors. A special thank you today to our diamond sponsors, CBRE, JLL, DPR Construction, and Little Diversified Architectural Consultings. We would like to also thank our platinum and gold sponsors for their annual support and support of today's program. Lamont Johnson, the Carolinas chapter president, is going to join us with a few chapter updates today. Lamont, welcome.
Thanks, Blake. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lamont Johnson, as Blake just said, a director in the real estate strategic planning group at Atrium Health here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm also the president of the Carolinas Coronet chapter. Thanks again to all our diamond, platinum, and gold sponsors. We really appreciate your support. Thank you all for joining the event today. This is actually our first event of the new board year for the Carolinas chapter, which started on April the 1st. So we are very excited about this year and all the different events that we have planned for this year, and also about the program we have today. Today's program was brought to life by Brad Divins and Hunter Fleshhood, along with several other members of the Carolinas and the New York City chapter members such as Bridget Beltran, Jessica Douglas, John Christenberry, and others. Thank you all for your work on pulling the program together today. And we also want to give a special thanks to Larry Charklip of T2 and Paul Reed of Epic Games. So we do have some upcoming events happening. So you may have seen it as we scroll through there. Thank you for pulling that back up. So on Tuesday, April 27, we're having the Changing the Environment for Healthcare in the Carolinas, a virtual event sponsored by South Carolina teammates within the chapter. On May the 6th, we have a virtual networking bingo event from our networking group. We also have a South Carolina happy hour in Greenville, South Carolina, our first event for the South Carolina group for this year. And then on May 19th, we have a Returning to the Office and the Impact to Your Real Estate Strategy virtual program by our Charlotte Programs Group. And then we have a call for content for our mega event that will be happening in later on in the year. So we're looking for content for that. So we know you have some great content, some great programs, some great projects out there, and we're looking for you to submit those for the mega event. Once again, thanks for joining the program today. I'm looking forward to this. This is a great topic, and I'm going to turn it over to Hunter Fleshhood to take us forward.
Thank you, Lamont. And thank you to Blake Martin, to Jessica Douglas, to Amanda Shoemaker, and all the others that were responsible for pulling today together this program. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Hunter Fleshhood. I lead sales for Comfy, which is a workplace technology company. I also serve as a member of the board on the Carolinas chapter of Coronet Global, and I am really excited to moderate today's program. So in preparing for this topic, gaming, video games, I was drawn back to some memories. So it's the early 1980s. Yes, I'm dating myself. I've got my members only jacket on, of course, and it's Friday night. I've got a pocket full of quarters and I'm headed to the arcade. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm bringing everything I made. I've got a callus on my finger, my shoulder's hurting too. I'm gonna eat them all up just as they turn blue. That's right, I had Pac-Man fever. That was then. The Coronet young leaders right now are wondering what the heck I'm talking about. Those of you that may remember in the early 80s, Buckner and Garcia had a hit song, Pac-Man Fever. But fast forward to today, 3 decades later, games, video gaming is a whole new world. Quite literally, the games today immerse you in a whole new world. You'll see some of that in the video clips to come. And gaming is serious business. By all reports that I've researched, there are 2.5 billion gamers in the world. Folks, that's a third of the human beings on this planet. Let's talk money. The gaming industry is a $180 billion industry, growing at about a 10% clip annually. Today's program is a spotlight. It's a spotlight on that industry and its growth. It's a spotlight on two leading companies in the industry. And it's a spotlight on two prominent CRE executives sharing what it's like to manage CRE in those environments. I'd like to welcome our panelists. Our first panelist is Larry Charlotte. Larry is Vice President of Facilities Management and Corporate Real Estate for Take Two Interactive, also known as T2, which is how I will refer to it today. Larry manages more than 40 locations and over 1 million square feet of space across North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Larry has more than 25 years experience in the CRE discipline across multiple industries, including commodities trading, pharma, legal, publishing, and entertainment. Prior to joining T2, Larry spent 6 years as Director of Facilities and Security at Winner Media, publishers of Rolling Stone, Us Weekly, and Men's Journal magazine. Larry also proudly serves as a member of the board of the New York City chapter of Cornet Global. Larry, thank you for being here. Let us show you a little bit about T2 with these short videos featuring a couple of their blockbuster brands. Amanda.
Charts, I'm setting them stakes. I put on my 10, shoot for the stars, they fall in my hand. Can't be stopped, you paying attention, I ain't gotta say it. They know where my head is, they know where my head is.
Product not yet ready.
Wow. Larry, thanks for being here. That's not Pac-Man. You see what I mean about whole new world and being immersed in a whole new world? Wow, my adrenaline's pumping. Let me introduce our next panelist, who is Paul Reed. Paul is the Director of Global Real Estate and Facilities at Epic Games, where he leads the development and implementation of Epic Games' global real estate strategy in support of the company's long-term business plans. Prior to Epic Games, Paul worked for the Corvias Group and JLL and has 20 years of experience in global real estate portfolio management, including transactions, leasing, planning, budgeting, property management, project management, construction, and risk management. Paul has led the acquisition of more than 1.5 million square feet of real estate across multiple properties. In 3 years at Epic, Paul has led their growth of Epic's office portfolio from 17 offices to more than 60 across 16 countries. Some of you may not have heard about Epic Games, but unless you've been living under a rock, you've undoubtedly heard about their blockbuster brand, Fortnite, which has more than 350 million registered players. What you may not know is Epic Games is much more than Fortnite. Their founder is Tim Sweeney, who now is the richest person in North Carolina. When he founded Epic Games, he created a platform, I'll call it, that was used to build games upon, called Unreal Engines. In an open source type of mindset, Unreal Engines today is openly available and free for anyone that wants to use it to build games or build other technologies upon it. And it's being used in a variety of industries. Here are a couple of amazing videos demonstrating what Unreal Engines can be used to create.
I could be one of many.
主人公にだってなれる。
Je pourrais être architecte,
Ou guide.
Quizá un artista. You create the narrative. I am metahuman.
Wow. Let me make a correction so I get the brand right. It apparently is Unreal Engine, not engines. Paul, thank you for being here. Those were amazing. Before we get into CRE topics, we want to hear a little bit more about your industry and your companies. Larry, let's start with you. Please tell us a little bit more about T2.
Sure. Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate being here. Take-Two is a Fortune 500 company with roughly $20 billion market cap. And our leading franchises are 2K and Rockstar, which is our videos of franchises like NBA 2K, WWE, Borderlands, Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, just to name a few. Grand Theft Auto is the highest selling entertainment property ever. NBA 2K is the leading sports video game franchise in North America. Nothing will ever beat FIFA, but we beat out Madden in the US. Just to name a few. And we're a rapidly growing company. I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I started with the company 8 years ago, and it's just been an exciting ride since then.
Thanks for that, Larry. And Paul, expand on Epic Games for us and tell us a little bit more about the company.
Thank you, and thanks for having us, Hunter. Epic Games is, as I joke with people on my team, no longer a 30-year-old startup. We're started in CRE quite some time ago. We've stayed in the same vicinity. We really like CRE, North Carolina, albeit we've grown into, as Hunter said, 16 other countries with multiple offices and acquisitions. Epic's brands, we have a multitude of brands across the gaming, especially with acquisitions. Most recently, we acquired a game last month and a company in London called Fall Guys. And where Epic is kind of different from most is we're free to play and on all platforms. So it could be mobile, It could be PC, or it could be dev kit, or what we call a dev kit, a game box. And so that makes us and makes Fortnite unique. And that's what has helped propel Fortnite to be a 400 million player game. To add to those service lines, we've talked a little bit, or Hunter showed the videos of Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine's being used across multiple verticals, whether it be architecture and engineering, or car design and manufacturing. The future of gaming, as you can see from our MetaHuman creator, this way of making lifelike digital humans, gaming will be something shockingly different in the future than it even is now. And Larry's clip reflected the human elements, if you will. And so one of the things I think Epic has done that takes us to a new level is we open our own store. When you have 400 million players, you can take, you can branch out and do different things that accelerate. So Epic started a game store in 2019 to compete with Steam, which is pretty much the only place you can buy video games, or one of the only places that you can buy a significant amount of video games. And so in the past year alone, our storefront has increased 192%, or 31 million daily users, and 700 million in revenue in 2020. We continue to do different games and events that also challenge the entire internet. So we do in-game concerts, for instance. So you go into the Fortnite game, you don't necessarily go and shoot people, but you go and watch Travis Scott do a concert. That's pretty cool. And that's kind of part of what's taking this Fortnite to the next level is, we literally had to shut people out once we got to 13 million concurrent users. And so I like to think of that as, a new TV show drops on HBO at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. People go in and watch it, but you don't all watch it at the exact same time and through the same stream. We've literally had to ask all of our business partners like Amazon Cloud Services to increase their ability to meet our requirements. So 13 million users all at the same moment, watching the same thing. And now we have to scale where we have multiple events around the world. But our goal is to be at 25 million users concurrently in the near future. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
It's got to be one of the most rapidly developing industries from a technology lifecycle perspective. I imagine you started roughly 4 years ago. Think back from that day one at Epic to today. Can you say a little bit more about the change you've witnessed just in those 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think our population growth is indicative of that, and it's actually just 3 years, and it's going so fast. So we have gone from 700 employees in CRE to 1,300 employees there alone, and I think it would be significantly higher, but we don't drive people to our kind of corporate headquarters. Our population, when I joined, we were less than 1,000 people globally, and now we're coming up on 4,000 or so. So significant growth, and from my specific perspective, seeing our office design and we've tried to help the company mature and experience new spaces, much like the one here in my background, which is one of our HQ buildings. So seeing an evolution of going from kind of a college dorm to a contemporary design or something modern and playful, and having great people on a team like Lisa Gorman or Chris Croissant who help us reach that next level.
Larry, I'm going to ask you the same question. You're in your 8th year at Take-Two. If you think back from then to now, what kind of change have you observed?
Yeah, I had the privilege of starting here about 5 months before a little game called Grand Theft Auto 5 launched, which is kind of like jumping on a rocket just before it's about to take off. We had been around for quite a while, but GTA 5, 8 years later, is still one of the top 5 selling games annually, which says something about that game. I started with the company. Our stock was at about $18 a share. Right now it's trading at $177. So we've grown a little bit. We had about just under 3,000 employees. Worldwide, we're approaching 6,000 today. The growth has been incredible, but to Paul's point, I think one of the more fun parts of it has been watching the maturity of it, and how that develops into our office space, or how our office space helps to support that growth. It's been a phenomenal 8 years. I mean, outside of just what GTA has done for the company, our partnerships with the NBA, we launched an esports league a few years ago, which has been very successful. The WWE franchise just continues to grow, which is a franchise we acquired when THQ went under. So it's been, and then to look at our upcoming pipeline, we announced, I think, last quarter that we have 93 games in our pipeline currently, which is the most we have ever had, and maybe the most of any video game company out there. We have 93 games in the pipeline, and we recently, a few years back, launched another division. We're very decentralized, so all of our labels stand on their own, but we launched a division called Private Division, which is a unique approach to the gaming industry. What Private Division does is they partner with smaller independent developers to help publish their games, and bring the backing of a Take-Two, EA, that kind of company to an independent developer. They still own their IP, or they're still in control of their IP, and we help them to publish that. Private Division has a few of their own IPs, but for the most part, they're independent developers, which is a unique arrangement, and has been very successful so far. And that's brought you games like Kerbal and several other big hits.
So with a third of the world's population considered gamers, I'm sure we have some on with us today. They probably want to continue this dialogue about the games and the brands and the products and what's coming next. But this is a CoreNet program, so let me shift us into corporate real estate a little bit more. Let me start with kind of size and scale, tail of the tape. Paul, can you give us the facts and figures on your portfolio and what you're managing?
Yeah, happy to, Hunter. We're 16 countries. Got off the phone call about an hour ago with Singapore, so we'll be 17 soon. And over 60 locations in, as I referenced, in North Carolina as our company headquarters. We have what I would call core offices in San Francisco, London, Seattle, Montreal. We're somewhere in that kind of mid corporate size company, 3,000 to 5,000 employees, and about 700,000 square feet right now.
Thank you, Paul. Larry, what about you? What's your portfolio profile?
Yeah, we're about 50 offices worldwide, North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. About 1.2 million, just north of 1.2 million square feet. And as I said before, we're approaching 6,000 employees globally.
Gotcha. Well, I imagine some people have been on virtual programs in the industry about COVID. Today is not a COVID focused program, but I acknowledge that's probably a primary priority for everybody, including the two of you. So let's at least get a bit of an update on that topic before we continue on some others. Larry, start with you. What's the current state of your work environment in light of the pandemic, and where are you in terms of planning what the rest of the year looks like?
Yeah, so all of our offices are voluntary reopening. We haven't required anybody to come back. We're at various stages depending on the local regions and the health risks associated. So Asia's a little further ahead, North America trailing behind that, and then obviously Europe has had some setbacks recently, so they're kind of trailing along. So anybody who's in our offices are in voluntarily. I happen to be in the office today. We evaluate each office on a as needed basis and based on the risk in that region. And in order for our employees to come back, they have to go through training. Services are scaled back significantly. And we have a bunch of requirements, from health attestations to, asking them not to take public transportation, things of that nature, in order for them to come back in the office. We are looking towards, first of all of our business units are making decisions about their return to office on an individual basis. There is no corporate down structure, just guidelines that they have to follow and approvals that they have to get. But most of our business units, are looking at coming back to the office in mass, even if it's some kind of hybrid solution. We are looking at being an office first environment. When that happens is going to change from business unit to business unit. One of the things that on the development side of the business is, we also don't want to disrupt development that's happening, right? So where some of our developers might have a kit that they're working on, dev kit that Paul was referring to, which is what they build their games on at home. To have that in two different places is very expensive, also very disruptive, and to move back and forth is disruptive as well. So we're on tight timelines on a lot of these projects, and we don't want to disrupt that. So some of them are geared around project deliverables as well.
So it's not just put your laptop in your briefcase and go back and forth.
It's that easy for me, but it's not that easy for a developer. No, somebody in our art department, no.
Yeah, that's different. We're going to get into a few more of the differences. And Paul, what about you? Give us a bit of a state of the union. Where are you? What are your plans? How are you dealing with the current pandemic?
Yeah, a little bit differently from Larry. We're having more of a centralized approach, and kind of also laying out guidelines, but making sure that people comply from a corporate HQ and that they're not off developing their own solutions, perhaps. We're closed everywhere globally for the most part. We do have a couple of development teams that maybe have some in-office requirements, but we're right on the cusp of, we've laid out kind of 5 phases, and we're right on the cusp of entering into phase 2, where we start preparing for the return to office. And I would suspect, and it's not communicated internally yet, but I would suspect by late summer, we'll have a voluntary re-entry, a phased approach, with a goal of maybe end of the year having a seat for everyone, not necessarily a mandate that everyone needs to come back, but that we've kind of worked through the kinks and developed our new solutions. So, food services, cleaning services, and all those types of things. But as Larry pointed out, one of the hard parts is, and expensive parts is, a lot of our developers have taken their rigs home, and these are very, very expensive machines and hard to get. My understanding is we're the biggest buyer of these machines in the world right now, and we're looking at doubling our intake, which is, other game companies are reaching out to our developers saying, why are you guys buying everything? And we're considering buying everybody a second kit so they can have one at home and one at work, so they can have that hybrid work solution. And they're $25,000 a piece at least. So it'll be interesting, but that's kind of the part of the people first approach I think that Epic takes. We, as someone on my team said, that pointed out, our employees are our most valuable assets.
Okay, I didn't prepare you guys for this question, but having you describe it, what are the utility bills like for your teammates working from home?
This is going to sound for the people working from home. I was about to answer from a corporate perspective. It's going to sound terrible.
Big machines plugged into an outlet in somebody's second bedroom. Is it a big draw?
I don't know. Fortunately, I don't deal with that other than a couple of teenage girls. But I can tell you, it's not something that I pay attention to in the office either, though. The demand is the demand, and we try to find other ways to be conservative, but power utilization is not necessarily one of them.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add, I don't necessarily pay attention to our utility bills, and for the most part, we're in leased office spaces, and so depending on our office, it's built in different ways that it's almost impossible to figure it out. But I will tell you that from a leasing perspective, where your typical landlord is giving tenants 4 watts per square foot, we require 8 in our development sites, right? So double. 4 to 5 is normal. We require 8 in all of our development sites. So I don't know what it's like for them at home. I can tell you, and I don't work on those big rigs, but my electric bill, particularly this past summer, was off the charts because now I'm running my air conditioning all the time. I can imagine those who are having all that equipment in their house, what they're doing, but I'm not privy to that information, and nor do I want to be honest with you.
So part of the examination of this topic as we started preparing was the what's different. You've already given a few examples, but we're going to spend the next segment of this program examining the what's different. I spent a lot of my career managing in the financial services industry for banks. Larry, you've done a lot of different industries and asset classes, including law firms, publishing. Paul, I think military housing and just different kinds of assets, right? Asset classes and real estate purposes. What we see, what we read about, what we just saw in these videos just feels like there's got to be a different place, a different setting, a different workforce in order to enable the creation of these amazing games, amazing engines. So that's what we're going to talk about. And we're all in the business of corporate real estate, but corporate real estate is in the business of enabling an employee experience that works best for them to accomplish their work. So it's really a people business. Let's talk about people first. Larry, I'm going to start with you. Describe T2's workforce. And I know you can't describe everybody homogeneously, but describe the workforce and give us a few examples of personas that may be different than what you saw in the law firms you managed.
Yeah, I think the difference for us in particular, I think I mentioned earlier, we're decentralized. We have decentralized structure. So all of our labels kind of operate independently. And you can almost think of each one of our offices as its own individual business unit. So, so each of our offices that you walk into has a different culture to it based on the games that they produce, right? So you walk into an office, Visual Concepts office, which is the group that publishes the sports games. You have that sports feel to it, right? You have, and you feel like that's the environment that you're in. You walk into Firaxis Games, which is Sid Meier's Civilization, and a lot of strategic games. You have that feel to it, and that population of developers are generally going to be older, more family oriented and stuff like that. So, each one of our offices is geared towards the culture and the group that they're serving. So it's a unique challenge when we're designing office space and we're picking office space where we want to be. How, are we in the central business district in a particular area? Do we want to be out in the suburbs because we're, more of our developers are older, or are we looking at a younger group and we want to be, we want to be in the central business district where there's amenities for them, but also designing them is designing them to their own unique structure and their own unique culture. So each office is different. But for the most part, especially on the development side of things, you're dealing with a population that somewhat socially awkward. These are guys that like to be, guys and women who like to be in the dark and heads down, and you pass them in the hall and there's not a lot of eye contact and stuff like that, right? So when I'm looking at office space, when I'm out with our brokers and studio managers looking at office space, first thing I tell our brokers is, don't talk about natural lights. The first thing brokers always want to talk about when they show you office space is how much natural light it gets. Don't talk about natural light. We want to talk about how dark can we make it. We don't want to be on the first floor, right? We don't want, we don't always want signage. Some of our locations do, not all of them do. So, that's what makes it a little bit different. When you're looking at office space for a law firm, you want that prominence. Don't necessarily want that. We want, we're looking at more brick and mortar. We want that gritty type space. don't necessarily need Class A office space. You know, our studio managers are very happy looking at Class B space. You know, the building around the corner that used to be a manufacturing plant, that kind of stuff.
So I have to admit, I would have presumed both of your companies' workforce had an average age that's very young. Larry, it sounds like that's not necessarily true.
Not across the board, no.
Yeah. And then, I mean, does that vary by job type? Are there corporate functions that are like any other corporate functions? Say more about, you mentioned like even different games, depending on the plot or the subject of the game, can generate different generations.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, again, if you look at Take-Two itself is a corporate entity, right? We don't do any development at Take-Two. So we're all your back office. We're kind of look at us as a holding company. So, you know, we're finance, HR, IT, sales and marketing, analytics, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, our Take-Two offices have more of a corporate feel to it. Although, to be honest with you, if you look around our portfolio, our corporate offices probably have the younger demographic to them. You know, our finance folks are, you know, probably average in their 20s. Our IT folks in the corporate level are probably in their high 20s, low 30s. When you get into our development studios, like I said, you know, some of the ones with, you know, some of our studios with the franchises that have been around a lot longer and have been more developed and are more strategic, our developers are going to be, you know, in their mid to late 30s, early 40s, families, things of that nature. It also depends on where we're located. You know, our demographic out in San Francisco is much younger than our demographic in rural Maryland, for instance, or, you know, things like that. Our mobile studios tend to have a younger population as well. So, you know, as you move from studio to studio and title to title, you'll see a very big difference in the age of the population.
Got it. Paul, now, I grew up in Raleigh. I'm back in the Triangle often. I'm familiar with CRE, and I think of the type of workers that's going into RTP every day for technology or pharma or life sciences. Is the workforce that's going to your headquarters in CRE different than what I have described?
That's a good question. Our workforce sounds very similar to Larry's. You know, some of the operation, you know, IT, some of those job skills are the younger population. We do have people that are in things like analytics and you know, engineering that could be over 50. You know, it's not unusual, and it's something that we should expect more of. You know, in our you know, we do see a lot, like Larry, we see a lot of creatives, and so, you know, people that aren't as outgoing as you and I, and, you know, do as Larry described, walk and look at the floor and not that interactive. You know, you get all types, but the unique thing is we're, you know, we try to customize and find commonality across, you know, the population, but also let people be unique. You know, it's truly not unusual to see someone come to work in pajamas, you know, or a costume or something, you know, you'd never expect, or, you know, literally have their rocker t-shirt on with no sleeves, and you're like, ooh, that's kind of unsightly. It's, you get a little everything, but, you know, that's part of who we are and the diversity that we're trying to bring to the organization as well. And that's a big push that we're making, is to make sure that we're promoting gaming and technology to, you know, to a diverse workplace and creating a diverse workplace. It's a big initiative of ours now.
Hunter, I'll give you a quick little story. When I first started with Take-Two, I have tattoos, and my sister's always been in HR. And first time I got a tattoo that's visible below a short sleeve shirt, my sister was like, "How can you do that?" Because she's used to me working for a more corporate environment. She's like, "You have visible tattoos," and I said, the first day I walked into my office 8 years ago, there was a guy sitting outside my office who had neck tattoos. I said, "So I don't think I'm worried about having a tattoo on my forearm. You know, it's not a big deal."
I've noticed that in our prep meeting, Larry. But you know, you described this. In a lot of respects, what you're hiring for is creative expression, So don't stifle the creative expression.
Yep.
That's interesting.
And that's how we're building our office spaces also.
Quick program reminder, we're going to keep this dialogue going. A lot of questions from me that we're already prepared to go through. We will have open chat Q&A at the end. And the next prepared question also came up in the chat. So Gustavo, thank you for this. We want to talk about the differences maybe that you all see in space design, layout, desk sharing, which has now probably been accelerated for a lot of companies. Paul, let's go to you first.
Yeah.
Your space layout and design compared to, I don't know that there's an industry norm, but industry trends.
Yeah. It's a significant struggle for all of us, the return to office and what to plan for, and whether it's more collaborative. I have a few biases that lead me to believe if I'm traveling into the office, I'm going to want somewhere dedicated I can work as well. So I don't want to necessarily suggest that we're going to change all of our work environments. A big portion of our work environments are kind of team offices, anywhere from 8 to 12 people. We have a dynamic where we build a lot of infrastructure into every single workspace. Our construction partners can echo that, where we are looking to put data and power all around the room. And we allow our users to literally take their desk on wheels and roll it somewhere. And, that corner can be theirs if they like the corner. And whether it's near natural light or away from natural light. So we're trying to build a very flexible environment. One thing that is unique about Epic or maybe the gaming industry is one of the reasons we're so dynamic and successful is because we bring teams together in a unique way very frequently. My first year at Epic, when we were 700 employees, we conducted over 1,000 moves by November of that year. I started in January, so it was kind of this almost like what I call tiger teams, bringing teams together to attack a project or a problem, and then disperse and go on to the next one. That'll be a challenge for us, of course, when we come back together. But it's one of the reasons we like being in the office is because we can be collaborative. And so another element of Epic that's unique is like we talked about with the kind of rigs and the dev kits and the computers that are required, along with the monitors. We are pretty much dedicated one desk per person, and we'll maintain that. We won't hot desk. So we've been having that discussion a lot on our leadership meetings about, return of office and office space requirements. And it makes it a bit of a luxury for me because I get to go out to the market and say, okay, I literally have this many people, and if we're at full occupancy, I need this many desks. And so I'm in negotiating a new lease in CRE right now for us to take another building so that we can continue that delivery and make sure that we're not that we're keeping up with our growth, because it's excessive. So we only have about 10% of our population that is operations that might even be able to share a desk. So.
I think that does make you very unique, and it takes me back to a decade or so ago of portfolio planning, capacity planning, where a head equal to desk. And you do have the benefit of that certainty. You may be, not as efficient as what some companies are doing now with a 2-to-1 ratio or more, but that's interesting. Larry, on space design, layout for you, your studios, your companies, anything you'd add to what Paul described?
Yeah, I think, we're in a similar situation as Paul. We are an assigned seating layout. So that does help us. We can't, when we're looking for space, it's 1-to-1. We can assign a number to that, whether, whatever square footage we want to determine how much space we need. Through COVID, several of our locations have talked about more flexible seating or hoteling and hot desking, but it doesn't look like many of them are moving in that direction. So we'll continue to plan that way. But one of the unique things for Take Two, as I said, each office is different. We don't have standards. We don't standardize on furniture. We don't standardize on any design. When you walk into a 2K studio, you're in a 2K studio. You don't know that you're in a Take Two office. So each project is recreating the wheel. That's a challenge. I believe my director of project management is on the call, and he can attest to that. but it also makes each project unique and fun. But from our, our studio standpoint, Paul's absolutely right. I mean, they move around quite a bit. So while we want to keep that dedicated space feel, there's a lot of mobility. So a lot of our studios, have all the same furniture throughout the studio, same or similar tech setups where they just need to move a pedestal, right? They just keep all their personal stuff in a ped and then they're off. So, we from a studio perspective, a lot of our studios try to keep it that way, but each one is different. We have a studio where everybody's in it, everybody has their own 8x8 office. Another studio where there's no offices, a studio where we have offices that range from 2 to 8 people. So it all depends on the individual culture. But I think one of the unique things, we've heard through COVID, a lot of companies talking about, moving towards hospitality type space and different areas to work. That's something we had been doing for years already here at Take Two. And while I think COVID's an accelerator of that, it's something we were already doing. So, all of our spaces are fully fit out with Wi-Fi. Almost everybody has laptops, so they can move around, and if you're not tied to a dev kit, right, that Paul was talking about earlier, you can move around and work wherever you want. I can pick my laptop up right now and go work in a lounge. Obviously, we have some restrictions due to COVID for it, but I can go work on a terrace of our space right here in Midtown Manhattan. So, it's about giving people opportunities to work in different ways. But if I need, I can come back to my office and put my head down and close my door. So, we're building more and more of those spaces and giving more and more of that flexibility. Next thing we need is wireless electric, and we're good to go.
Yeah, wireless power. You have to Google a video about Disney Innovation Studio. They did a experiment on wireless power that was able to operate a desk fan, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, I've seen it.
I digress, but to truly get the office cable free, wireless power would be something. Maybe we can create that with Unreal Engine, or I don't know. Let's go to, all right, we talked about space layout, workforce. I'm going to skip ahead on kind of the order here to location. And I would presume a lot of folks on the phone, a lot of people in the industry that have dispersed portfolios and are doing location planning to determine the where, will draw toward, we're going to get the highest quality talent at the lowest cost, or the, kind of play that sensitivity, and cost drives a lot. What drives the where for you, Paul? What drives the go get space here?
The talent drives everything. The reason we have over 60 offices, or accelerated with a lot of small offices initially, was just where can we get the best talent in the world, and where they are, well, if they're the right person, we'll build a team around them. So we've got, in Sweden alone, we have, say, 4 offices, and each one has a different, person or team that were important to us. So that's really the true driver. Plus, obviously, location is important to the lead of the office, country manager, or the business unit leader. That doesn't change, across industries. I think we all expect, the CPO who lives in a specific part of town, that's where you're going to be. To a degree, you're going to, do demographic studies and stuff, but that's really what's driving our location, and it's not a cost base. So one of the things that I think is interesting about Epic, and that I've kind of literally sat down with our founder and explained my approach was, in an accelerated, company, is to focus primarily on quality, and then speed, and then cost. That's kind of my marching orders for our team when it comes to design build outs, is, how do we hit that bar where our employees don't have, noise and acoustical issues going between offices, and, and what are the solutions to bear? So we've worked really hard to improve the quality of our spaces, to avoid distractions, whether it be daylighting or, again, noise. And then, how can we do it in a quick manner, and then we worry about cost.
So talent's the driver, and to produce what you produce, it's logically makes a whole lot of sense. Larry, either chime in with that's the same there or different, and if talent is the driver for you also, are there gaming talent hotbeds around the
Well,
world?
sure. I think it's very similar to just the tech talent, right? So it's talent driven. I can't tell you how often I get a call that says, oh, but we've hired 6 people in a particular city, and they're doing great. We want to open an office. Can you open it in 3 months? So it's all talent driven. It's about where can we find it, and the talent, is very similar. It's going to be for the most part, it's those hotbeds that of, right? Like obviously the Bay Area, Austin, around the coasts, we're all throughout Europe. There's just a tremendous amount of Toronto and Montreal are big tech cities for us. Scotland, UK. So we're wherever the talent is, we're gonna be. We're gonna get there, and whether that's organic growth or by acquisition.
Paul, you look like we're going to add there.
Yeah, I'm echo the same thing Larry's saying. There's markets also where you don't expect to find a lot of tech talent, or I wouldn't. We had an executive who asked that we could open an office in Amsterdam for him, and in 2021 we'd hire 4 to 6 people. I opened an office for him in December, followed up with him in January. He just moved in December, and we had 7 people already. And
Wow.
So there are interesting markets, and some of the things you got to work through is that long lead times to hire people as well. They don't give 2 weeks notice in Amsterdam, so you gotta play through some of these other scenarios.
Yeah,
so
we're in the same boat. I got a call about Orlando, Florida. I was like, well, I never thought I was going to be in Orlando, but we're going to talk about Orlando, Florida.
Don't share too much. You're going to share each other's fishing holes.
That's right. I'm sure at different organizations in the company that we are playing in each other's fishing holes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see.
It's the first thing we do when we look at space. The first thing we do is we ask our broker to map out where our competitors are.
The first thing I do is when they come to me and go, oh, so-and-so's in this building, I go, great, we can hire their employees. Let's go.
Yeah, we don't want to be in their buildings.
We're the opposite, Larry.
We'll write it into our leases.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach as well. We have, Epic, like Take-Two, perhaps. We don't advertise where we are or who we are, and in a lot of instances, we're big enough now that we get signage rights, and we don't want any of them. We don't want to display who we are, and that'll be an interesting topic for talking through our mall acquisition. And now one of the leases we're negotiating, we can name 5 companies that can't have signage rights. So we're working through that. I had to call the local market team and go, who do I need to know about?
Yeah, we do that as well.
The competitive landscape must be fierce. For the audience's benefit, in preparing for this program, and Brad Divins really surfaced the idea from a Cornet connection in Sao Paulo and the Brazil chapter. And there's a gaming company there called Wildlife Games. And we intended to have them part of the panel. For other certain reasons they weren't, but there's another sort of competitive company, another part of the world. I reached out to Cornet members through the Cornet network with Activision Blizzard, and I believe they're in Southern California. Had a conflict, couldn't make it, but what was really cool for me to see and learn and know about is this industry that seems just so unique and kind of uniquely on their own, has professionals that are in the same network, same industry circles as us, and just another testament to Cornet. You can find your competitors, you can find your peers. We talked about daylighting. We talked about power wattage requirements, dress code. Let me ask if any other examples to share about what I'll call FM operations or space requirements that we haven't already hit on. Larry, think of any?
Yeah, I think we hit on a lot of them. I mean, there are, there's the outliers, right? There's audio rooms that we need to build and cool, and motion capture studios, which are basically building, movie studios in warehouses or old airplane hangars and stuff like that. So those are kind of, we have a few of those, and those are challenges from our end. But the rest of it is just really trying to build cool, innovative workspaces and service them for the talent that we're trying to bring in. We are fighting for the same talent that the Googles, Twitter, Facebooks are, but not with those pockets, right? So we have to make our spaces and the offerings that we have, compare somehow. We're not Take-Two. We don't, in our studios, we don't have the huge cafeterias and the and big game rooms, although we do have, we do have game rooms. But we've got to compete with that, and we've got to build those spaces in each market that works for the talent that's there.
So, all right, I'm going off script again here for you, Larry. You mentioned motion capture studios.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing the bodysuit with the ping pong balls all over it.
Exactly what it is.
Did you ever build one of those for LeBron or?
I have one in a grocery store in Cary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And do you all get the athletes or characters or celebrities that you're creating to actually do some of that motion capture?
We get actors, not necessarily. You don't necessarily need a very famous person doing that. We're doing a different solution now. We much like we do motion capture now, Epic is partnered with other groups, and using our Unreal Engine, we do movies and TV shows now. So Epic, Jon Favreau, director of Star Wars, created Mandalorian in a warehouse in LA and never had to go to site. The solutions that they use now, instead of using green screens, we use LED walls, and we use a 300-degree LED wall that's more than 100 feet long, and so you don't have to go to a different set. You can change the background, you can change the time of day. It's fascinating, and there's some pretty cool YouTube videos that show how this is done. So this is a solution that we won't necessarily film and carry, but we're going to have demo stages and rooms that allow us to practice and demo. So those are pretty unique instances, but it's also another way in which the gaming industry is changing another industry. Hollywood will make movies in a different environment now from now on. And we, all over the world, there's the new VFX studios being built using this LED wall solution that are just extraordinary. And a lot of it runs on Unreal Engine, and now car dashboards are running on Unreal Engine, and the new Hummer all electric is, all of those solutions are all from the gaming industry. So it's pretty cool.
We use actors as well, but the nature of our WWE and NBA game, we do have to be in touch with the athletes. To some extent, they will come into our motion capture studios. We recently acquired but the most important feature for us there is facial scanning. So we have that in some of our motion capture studios, but we also purchased a company that does mobile facial scanning. So they'll travel around the country with trailers to where the teams are or where the wrestlers are, and do that work mobily.
Amazing, amazing. Quick program note for the audience. This program does extend to 1:30, to make note of that. I have a couple more topics to ask questions on with our speakers, then we're going to open it up for chat Q&A. So next topic, we've hit on this a little bit. A lot of your growth has been driven by M&A, acquisitions. Paul, it sounds like you're doing some due diligence on a potential deal as we speak in Southeast Asia. Without divulging what you can't divulge, can you talk about your acquisition activity, and just, it sounds like that's almost a continuous process that you have to sustain.
It is, and it's muscles that we continue to build. You know, we were acquiring maybe 1 or 2 companies a year. Now we're at a tempo of probably 7 to 10. And so, you know, we've hired people that are specialists in corporate development and are building platforms. And, you know, and from time to time, we stop and take a break and say, how well are things working? You know, and one of my big questions was, we have a defined separation of duties and working through checklists to make sure that we're covering all of our aspects and not doubling work, much like in any other environment. But now it's just from an acquisitions perspective. Luckily, I think Larry and I both get to participate early, and the value of real estate is pretty important to transactions. I gave someone an example of last week. We approved a domestic travel policy, and since I was on the team and I knew that it was coming, I immediately booked travel to go tour space in New York. You know, I went up there looking for a certain population size. This was a Friday. Monday morning, I had an LOI on my desk that we're acquiring a company, and they had 15 people literally blocks from where I was in Manhattan. You know, and so those it always pushes us to overestimate on our real estate needs, especially when we're at that kind of what we talked about, that one desk per person solution. So it is ever changing.
Yeah. And I think, just to kind of add to what Paul was saying about, our seat at the table, it hasn't always been that way. When our very early on, my time here at Take-Two, when our acquisition started to pick up, it was very common for me to get a call from our legal department saying, hey, in 2 weeks, we're closing on this acquisition, and we have all these leases that need to be assigned. Or, we need you to review these leases. We need to, there's a bunch of due diligence and evaluation that has to happen. Now, by developing our processes for acquisitions as we've matured, real estate facilities is at the table earlier, where we're going in and evaluating, well, what work do we need to do to bring these small acquisitions that we're doing up to speed, or up to the standards that we require, particularly from an IT perspective. And security perspective. So we're there earlier. We're getting in there earlier. But to what Paul's saying, we announced an acquisition several weeks back of a company in Austin, Texas. The company has about 40 employees currently, and we announced right away we're going to grow that team to 200. All right, so right away we're in the market. Now you got to be careful when you're doing that, because we were out in the market before the acquisition happened, right? Before the acquisition was announced. We're a publicly held company. We have some regulations we need to protect in doing that. So we have to be we're out in the market in a very quiet manner to do that. But, we're going to acquire this, oftentimes we're going to acquire this company and they want to start growing that team right away. So it's not like we can acquire them, go out to the market on space, find space, build space. This all needs to be happening simultaneously. So it's a balancing act in doing so.
The banks I worked for many years would probably also have acquisition and integration as a core function. It was continuous, and we built a lot of muscle doing that also. But one of the first things we always did was look at the overlapping portfolio and plan for the collapse and the integration. Larry, I learned that that's not always the case, and sometimes you will absolutely not do that. Why is that?
Yeah, so again, we're decentralized, and we won't co-locate different titles, different labels, right? Definitely not from a Rockstar and 2K perspective, right? They will always be, in separate offices. From a development standpoint, there are in certain countries where their marketing and sales and marketing teams are co-located in small corporate offices. But even within like our title 2K, who has a bunch of different labels for Access, Cat Daddy, Hangar 13, Visual Concepts, and so forth, outside of their headquarters in Northern California, we don't generally co-locate them. We're talking about doing that in one location right now, and it's a new concept for us. So there's a lot of internal conversation about how do we do that? How do we build this space so that two different labels under Take-Two aren't intermingled.
That's very interesting.
And a lot of times they don't know how many people they're going to put there. So we're, we're flying blind on that and trying to figure it out.
Before we leave the topic of M&A, acquisition activity, anything else you'd like to add, either of you? Well,
That's really all I've got. I think the only other thing kind of attached to that and a little bit different from Paul and I is, Take-Two is a publicly held company. We've got some regulatory things and budgetary reporting that we have to stick to. And I think, Paul has a little bit more freedom in some of those areas. In some cases, it's good because I'm actually, we've got a budget that we've got to report to and stuff like that. And that, we have, a lot of this goes back to our shareholders and, I don't have got a nice big checkbook, but I don't have an open checkbook, and I can't just sign for anything that I want to go out and acquire for facilities and real estate. We have quite an extensive approval process, which slows us down a little bit, but also keeps us in check and doesn't have everybody out there doing their own thing.
I don't know why this surprised me, but I was surprised to learn first that both your companies are almost 30 years old, and you're nearly the same age. 30 years ago, Take-Two was incorporated, and 28 years ago, or excuse me, vice versa. Epic 30 years old, Take-Two is 28.
Yep.
As you mentioned, Larry, 4 years later, Take-Two went public. It's traded on NASDAQ. Epic remains privately held. Paul, you've worked for and with some public companies. What is that private ownership? How does that translate to decision-making, real estate, what you get involved with?
Larry touched on that a little bit. I think one of the unique things about Epic is we get a lot of autonomy and we get a lot of responsibility, and those areas aren't defined. When we had a new executive, he approached me about our portfolio, and in the description of our portfolio, he's like, oh, well, maybe we have a problem in Europe. And I talked to him a little bit about that and educated him on the approach of the business and the driver for talent. And that's how we ended up with these solutions. It's not that real estate wants an office in every market. Real estate wants core offices so we can provide better, services and collaboration. And consistency across the portfolio. So that's something during COVID we've really driven for on our team within Epic, is to go back to the old ways of facility management and operations, because we've been on such a growth path. We've not had a lot of time to do anything other than lease, design, build, and then operate. And so kind of part of that discussion about the leasing and the large portfolio is it'd be really helpful if we had business planning, and we were held accountable to some of these things. So some of that's evolving, it's changing monthly, in fact, but I do have the luxury of making recommendations and not, have to live to a budget per se. It's whatever the business requires at that time.
Yeah, I think on the public side of that, again, we're given a lot of flexibility just because of the success that we've been having, but I can't just go out and sign a lease, a long-term lease that's, going to cost us $30 million over 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. We have an approval process. We have a board that we have to go to get those approvals. So we have to be strategic in how we approach it. And we also have to make sure that we plan appropriately, because there are multiple levels of approval that we have to go through. There's defined steps. I can't sign an LOI on Monday and be ready to sign a lease on Friday. It's just not going to happen. We're going to go through a very extensive process. And that's challenging because in a lot of the markets where, we're competing for space, with the same companies we're competing for talent, right? With Google and Facebook and those guys and Amazon and some, so we need to be able to, make sure that we're justifying to our shareholders and to our board why we're doing this when it comes to our bigger space acquisitions.
I would say we have the similar approval requirements. They're just less formal. And so, at times, or even the analysis of the deal is perhaps less complicated than Larry has to go through. I can literally make recommendations. I still have to get approval, and if it's over a certain value, then it might need to go to our exec team. But that's it.
We won't even get into the number of attorneys I have to go through.
Well, lease review is a different topic. So,
thank you to our audience who's hung on. I'm certainly enthralled by this topic. It sounds like many. We've got a lot of questions, so we'll spend some time here on these questions that have come in through the chat. Gustavo, and thank you for submitting those, Gustavo. I think we answered the one from you. Brian Urban, thanks for being here. Asks, what are the characteristics of CRE that you and your employees love? And while we're back to CRE, there's a little project that people have maybe read about. Paul, what can you say about why CRE and what's going on?
Well, first and foremost, I think when Tim Sweeney came from his parents' house in Maryland to CRE that 20 odd years ago, and in doing so, he was meeting a bunch of other developers, and they just picked out of a hat Raleigh, kind of, let's all go meet in Raleigh. And then Tim decided he liked it and stayed. And so for us, when we're looking at expanding our headquarters, we want to make sure that our population isn't impeded. And our demographic is similar to what it is now. So we decided after a site selection review a couple of years ago to build in our current headquarters. We love the building design that our architects presented. And then after some review and setting the project down last summer because of COVID and not really wanting to carry forward a building design without knowing what return to office looked like, we have new executives. So I took to them. I said, hey, should we consider doing this somewhere else? And I always liked the idea of doing it at CRE Town Center, and presented that solution again. And kind of backed myself into a corner because I said, hey, we can let Turnbridge, the current developer who bought the mall, continue their development. We buy half of it, which is similar to what I promoted 2 years ago, or we could buy all of it. And they said, go buy all of it, which is part of that kind of, the luxury of maybe, being a private company and the exec saying, I like the idea of owning it and no encumbrances. Well, I had encumbrances because there was a couple of tenants that the developer who was building a mixed use site, he was building up literally around a couple of the existing buildings. So I ruined my holidays by sitting at home and negotiating with and through a developer to get some major retailers out of the way. And I think the location is fantastic, and there's probably perceptions that Epic overpaid for the site, but I don't know that you can put a value on 87 acres in your back door, in your hometown. It's an extraordinary solution. And, I feel proud that I was given the opportunity to do it. And now I'm really excited to develop a team to go and plan it. And we got a couple of years of extremely big lift in front of us. And we're working with the community in the town and had a pre-application for zoning meeting yesterday with the town of Cary. And like I said, I think it would be daunting if we didn't assemble, some of the best people in the world to deliver the project. And so we've started that, and it's going to be a long road. But an exciting road.
There are a lot of Carolinians here today from our chapter and living here, and we, I think, all are proud that Epic Games calls North Carolina home. So exciting! It will be exciting to see how that evolves. Here's a question from Mr. Worldwide. Some of you may know him as Brad Divins. He's probably done a transaction on all 7 continents. And his question is a global perspective question. You have global footprints. Are there any countries that have given you problems or that you shy away from, or that are going to be difficult to do business in based on something about that country, regulation or government oversight? And Larry, anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have the typical challenge of China in particular. And from a gaming perspective, you can't really develop in China unless you have, except through a partnership with Tencent, which is partially owned by the government. So China, just the nature of doing business in China, I don't think it's necessarily unique to the gaming industry. but there are some challenges. So that's obviously one. Um,
I have one that's a real pain in the ass.
Go ahead, Paul. What's that?
Hey, we, for whatever reason, we have so much trouble with landlords in Finland. You know, it sounds funny, but it is really hard market to do work in. And then add COVID to it, and getting people into the country right now is a challenge. They have international travel stipulations and stuff, and getting product into the country is hard as well. There's a lot of countries where, our technology solutions and equipment are hard to get into, China being one of them. But one comes to mind right away, and the landlords, we had a landlord we did a deal with and worked all the way through leases. We were about to sign the deal, and they literally terminated the lease negotiations on us because they were going to lease the whole building to the school district. It's like just a local market thing, but so we had to pivot and start over. And now with the landlord we're dealing with now, they won't let us into the suite until they hand it over. And it's customary that you get in, you do your cabling, you do all these other things, and so from a transaction perspective, it's really difficult. And
Paris was like that for us.
Yeah. Thank you. Paris is on our list to open, so thanks for the warning, Larry. I'll call you later.
Yeah. I had a landlord who was negotiating a lease with us and somebody else at the same time, and basically called us the day of and says, whoever signs by the end of the day today gets the space.
Another value of CoreNet plug is in there somewhere. Sharing lessons learned, best practices, and going to the old global membership directory and finding someone located there. Starting an outreach with, hey, I'm a fellow CoreNet member, I really does work and creates an instant bond. So maybe that'll work for you in that case. Kevin Mertens asked an interesting question back to sort of the workforce. Do you use community college, technical schools, higher ed, and maybe even other educational programs to source talent as a company?
Yeah, we're definitely going in that direction. Epic 2 years ago started intern program. So we have a lot of university relationships that we're developing, as well as, fostering relationships with students. But we also do some local programs with like Wake Tech. They teach how to use Unreal Engine in some of their classes. And so there's a lot of relationship building there. I think it's another impact that we can make on the community, as well as help develop talent.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. That's done at our studio level, individually. But for instance, our partnership in Montreal, which is an office we opened not too long ago, is with the tech community, and I'm forgetting the name of the university, but there's a big tech university in Montreal that is feeding the market there, and we've got partnerships there as well.
I want to go back to a question submitted prior to today from Blake Martin. Unreal Engine, those awesome videos. If you noticed, one of those videos, which Paul recommended, showed a lot of architectural scenes and even design and construction scenes, very applicable here. You may have missed it, but Paul, if I'm not mistaken, it's a platform anyone can use and build upon or build with. Is that right? How would someone in this audience learn more about how to do that?
Epicgames.com. We have a Unreal Engine portal. You can download open source. You can download both Twinmotion, I believe, as well as Unreal Engine. And Twinmotion is a little bit easier, is my understanding. And we're developing those muscles internally as well, as to make sure that we're using our own tools, so that when we want to present internally, we have realistic renderings of what the end solution looks like. The problem with us, and probably with Larry, is we have the people who have developed these tools, but getting their attention to help design internal studios is impossible. So we either have to develop the talent on our team and have free learning within the organization, which Epic also provides, or I put into my build costs, spending $10,000, $15,000 on someone outside of the company to render. And I'll go to our team and say, hey, who would you recommend that does architectural renderings? And then when we do larger developments like our campus we're designing, our presentations are done in Unreal Engine and Twinmotion. And more recently, when we developed our new headquarters building for CRE, we would do a typical presentation on the screen, but on a television to the side, we would have a VR and presentation in Twinmotion. So kind of just a black and white type solution where there's someone from our architect sitting with a game controller and walking us through the building, and you know, very lifelike and realistic. It's a neat way to model. So I think that some fantastic solutions to implement.
That's amazing. I will check that out more for sure. I'm going to pose the last question to Larry before we get to concluding. Paul talked about the three-legged stool of project management or delivery: cost, quality, or speed, quality, and cost. What does that three-legged stool look like for you? You know, Paul's on North Carolina time, you're in New York time, so maybe speed's a little more urgent, but in all seriousness, what does that stool look like for you? And does it sometimes vary requirement to requirement, project to project?
It does. It varies project to project, but I mean, you know, cost and speed are always a factor, right? It's our guys want to get in an office as quickly as possible. Generally, when we're moving into a market, they've already hired a bunch of people, so they want to get in there as quickly as they can. You know, and we talked earlier about budgeting and stuff like that, so cost is always a factor. I think, you know, the third one for me is localization and design, right? So we like I said, we don't have standards. While we have relationships with global project management and design firms and construction firms, we want the team that's working on our project to be local to that project, right? So if we're going to hire a global architectural firm, we want the team in London to be working on our London project and to not be headed out of Houston, right? Because we want there to be that local flavor, that local design, and the team that's going to run that office is responsible for that culture, and they don't want to feel like it's being dictated from New York or Northern California. So those are, you know, localization is a big one for us.
I think that's wonderful. Jessica, Douglas, Susan Cook, thanks for your questions about how do you select partners for both architecture and design and construction. And Larry, for your answer, you know, using who's local, I think has a lot of merit, a lot of benefit. Fabulous content today. Paul and Larry, I can't thank you enough for the time you spent with us today, as well as prepping for this meeting. I learned a lot about your industry, about your companies. I enjoyed getting to know you, and I really appreciate everyone who attended today. Our programs team, again, Jessica Douglas, Blake Martin, our executive director for the chapter, Amanda Shoemaker, others that helped, Brad Divens, the idea for the program, Brigitte Beltran, helped us engage Larry and the New York chapter. I'm sorry if I'm missing folks, but thank you to everyone that helped and contributed to making this program. To conclude, I'll pass it back to Blake Martin.
Thanks, Hunter. I appreciate it. Larry and Paul, we appreciate you guys spending your morning with us in all the prep meetings. And I'm seeing chat comments about how folks can keep going with this. So I think you guys have definitely spurred some interest. Again, we want to thank our Diamond, Platinum, and Gold sponsors for making this possible today. And as Hunter said, our New York chapter friends, our Carolina chapter volunteers, and of course, Amanda, our executive director. We could not do this without her in the background, pulling all the strings and clicking and letting you guys all in. So thank Amanda the next time you see her. Before we conclude today, I just want to remind you of the event on the 27th. Please make sure you go and register. And I think we've got a great panel about healthcare that our South Carolina colleagues have provided for us on the 27th. Shortly after today's presentation, you will receive a survey. We hope that you guys will fill that out and give Hunter, myself, and the rest of our team some feedback so we can continue to deliver great content to you and make sure that your membership is fruitful. With that, it's a wrap. We hope you guys have a great rest of the week and a wonderful afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job, everybody.